Hello, beautiful people, and we're back beyond the mat with more Cannabis Talks today with your host, J. Cole Yoga. We're moving right along. Provinces, territories, and municipalities. Question 20. What role will provinces and territories play under the proposed new system? Implementing cannabis legalization and regulation will require action by the provinces, territories, and municipalities. So they're leaving it up to everyone else but them. That's why the Government of Canada will continue to engage them in the days and months ahead. They will be vital partners in the proposed regime. The bill provides that they may take responsibility for developing, implementing, maintaining, and enforcing systems to oversee the distribution and retail sale of cannabis in close collaboration with municipalities. The proposed act would require provinces and territories to enact legislation that contains minimum conditions so that public health and safety objectives are consistently addressed across the country. Provinces and territories would also have the ability to increase but not lower the minimum age, lower the possession limit, and impose additional requirements on personal cultivation. Finally, provinces and territories acting on their own authorities can set additional restrictions and local requirements related to cannabis, such as setting zoning restrictions for cannabis-related businesses and restricting where cannabis can be consumed in public. Question 21. Will Canadians be allowed to consume cannabis in places like cafes and bars or at music festivals? Under the proposed Cannabis Act, provinces and territories, under their own authorities, can set additional restrictions and local requirements related to cannabis, including restricting where and how cannabis may be consumed. Let's go back to when I was in LA. We're sitting out on a patio sidewalk bar, having a few beer, smoking blunts. In a cloud of smoke, everyone is just blazing up. Two police officers come walking down, LAPD walking down the path on Venice Beach, and they just walk through this black cloud of smoke and just kind of, because everyone had a permit to smoke. So by them going around and harassing people, it was just really eating up too much of everyone's time. So they just kind of let it go. I don't think it's going to be the same here in Canada. 22. Will municipal governments have a role to play in the system proposed under the Cannabis Act? Yes, municipalities will be key partners in supporting the implementation of the proposed legislation. It is anticipated that municipalities will work closely with their respective provincial or territorial governments to support the oversight and regulation of cannabis distribution and sales once the Cannabis Act comes into force. It is also anticipated that municipalities will play an important role in enforcing local zoning and density bylaws, building standards, and matters related to minimum age of purchase, personal cultivation, personal possession limits, smoking restrictions, public nuisance complaints. These will be enforced through municipal bylaw, health and safety inspectors, and the POPO. Question 23. Will the Cannabis Act Question 23. Will the Cannabis Act allow for zoning restrictions to prevent the cultivation or sale of cannabis near schools or other areas where children are likely to congregate? The proposed Cannabis Act provides that provinces and territories may, acting on their own authorities, set additional restrictions and local requirements related to cannabis beyond what are present in the proposed act, such as setting zoning restrictions for cannabis-related businesses and outlining specific restrictions on where and how cannabis can be cultivated. So if you live next to a school, you're probably not going to be allowed to. Question 24. Will an adult in Canada be allowed to move cannabis between provinces and territories? Under the proposed Cannabis Act, there would be no inherent barriers to transporting cannabis between provinces and territories. However, the individual must respect the minimum age for cannabis possession in the province or territory that they are in. And this is where things can get really confusing, because if you don't know the law, then you could get kind of messed up that way. So, I don't know. With respect to broader trade in cannabis for non-medicinal purposes between provinces and territories, the federal government has agreed to work closely with its provincial and territorial partners to determine how the new Canadian Free Trade Agreement would apply to cannabis for non-medical purposes following royal assent of the Cannabis Act. Production. Question 25. How could an individual or corporate entity apply to be a producer of cannabis, a distributor, or a retailer of cannabis? All producers of cannabis or cannabis products will, under the proposed Cannabis Act, need to be federally licensed to operate following the coming into force of the proposed act. The Government of Canada will establish application processes and criteria for those individuals or entities who wish to become producers of legal cannabis. There's a lot of red tape and hoops to jump through. The provinces and territories, in collaboration with municipalities, may, under the proposed act, take responsibility for developing, implementing, maintaining, and enforcing systems to oversee the distribution of retail sales of cannabis. As such, individuals wishing to enter these industries will be required to apply under the systems developed by their province or their territory and to meet the criteria outlined under those systems, as well as the federal act and supporting regulations. Question 26. Could an existing licensed producer open a retail outlet? Provinces and territories, in close collaboration with municipalities, may, under the proposed act, take responsibility for developing, implementing, maintaining, and enforcing systems to oversee the distribution and retail sale of cannabis. All individuals or entities, including federally licensed producers who wish to pursue or a retail operation under the proposed Cannabis Act, will be required to meet any criteria that may be set out by their province or territory of residence or operation. Question 27. Will the Government of Canada take issues such as regional economic development or Indigenous needs into considerations when granting production licenses under the Cannabis Act? The Cannabis Act provides that the Government of Canada may consider a range of factors, such as health and safety considerations, when granting a license. As well, the Act provides the Minister of Health with the authority to establish a clear, fair, and orderly process for the processing of licenses. The Government of Canada has no plans to limit the number of licenses that would be issued. Additional details as to how the licensing regime will be administered will be developed further in the months ahead, so we don't know. 28. Will the Government of Canada prevent cannabis producers, monopolies, from controlling the entire or majority of the legal cannabis market? Canada has strong competition legislation already in place that prevents corporate entities from forming monopolies within the Canadian economy. I totally beg to differ, the way that Irving owns all of the media newsprint in New Brunswick. Under the proposed Cannabis Act, legal cannabis producers would be subject to the same anti-competitiveness regulations as any other corporate entity in Canada. So bullshit. 29. Will there be restrictions on THC concentration? Health Canada is evaluating a number of approaches that could be used to effectively manage the concentration of THC in various cannabis products. THC is the part that gets you high. So they're only talking about this one cannabinoid. There's thousands to millions of other cannabinoids in there. So this kind of strange. I guess it's just for the potency, because some people don't know how much to take. They eat too much. They green out. Noobs. This evaluation includes reviewing work that has been done in jurisdictions that have already legalized the use of cannabis. It is the government's intention to set regulatory requirements that would standardize the amount of THC that could be in a single portion of certain cannabis products. For example, how much THC could be in an edible product, and that THC amount clearly stated on the product labels. In this way, consumers will have clear information to make decisions about consumption and the risks they are taking. So it's similar to, again, they're putting this in the same basket as alcohol. You look at your bottle to see how much percentage of alcohol is in it, and then you kind of understand, your limits that way. So, Question 30. Will persons who have committed cannabis-related offenses be allowed to apply to produce cannabis? So if you've been a grower and you've been caught, are you going to be allowed to take part in this game? In assessing applications for production licenses, the Government of Canada may consider a number of factors to protect the health and safety of Canadians. These factors could include whether the applicant has a history of criminal activity. It is the government's clear objective to protect against the infiltration of the legal supply chain by organized criminals or gangs. So basically, no. We're going to stop it right there, folks. Cut this video short. Got one more after this. There's only 10 more questions to go. If you like these videos, please subscribe right here. Click the little J logo, doing my yoga pose. Ooh, Warrior 2, Warrior 2, subscribe, Warrior 2. Peace, love, and light. Namaste, and all that other good noise.